So as I'm going through this battle, it's going to ask me a variety of math questions. And as I work my way through these, I'm going to be able to eventually win this battle. Now, one of the other interesting things here is you can see that I can also use a pencil tool on the screen. So if your kids, especially if your kids have some special needs, you might actually want to write out some of the steps to answering a question. So for example, I can see kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 8s here. If I'm doing a long division question on the screen, for example, this is also really helpful. But in this case, I'm going to answer 1/2, and that'll give me the ability to eventually defeat my opponent here. So that is a little bit on the student side of Prodigy. Now, the interesting part for you as a parent is there are a couple ways to take advantage of Prodigy as a parent. And I'm also going to show you a little bit of an insider tip, which is you can create a teacher account on Prodigy and take advantage of it as a teacher as well, which gives you access to some more advanced reporting or functionality. So let's go into the parent account first here. And this is what a parent account on Prodigy will look like. And a couple of things that you can do in the parent account that might help you is you can set a goal for your child. So let's say I want to set a goal of answering 10 correct questions. I'm going to say set this month's goal. And then I can tell my child, in this case, Adam, to go on to Prodigy and answer questions. And after Adam has answered my 10 questions, I will be able to reward them with this goal. So this gives you a very simple way as a parent to engage with your child on the Prodigy platform. It's kind of like, hey, do your 10 questions on your worksheet and I will give you a prize. This allows you to give them a prize directly on the Prodigy platform. You can also see their progress using the report card function here. And in this case, you can see kind of what they've done in September here, month by month. You can go back to August and see what their evaluation was and roughly what their curriculum progress was here as well. Although what I will say is one of the ways to get the most out of Prodigy if you're actually using it to homeschool your kids is to do something a little nifty here, which is to create a teacher account on Prodigy. So let me just share my screen here and I can show you what a teacher account looks like. Teacher accounts are free for anyone to create on Prodigy. So you don't need to be an actual classroom teacher to create a teacher account. And what this will allow you to do is you get access to some of our more advanced features and functionality as a teacher. So do any of you use a particular textbook or curriculum within your homeschooling practice? If you wouldn't mind typing in the chat, that would be Math with Confidence, Beast Academy, Mammoth Math. Okay, all good choices. One of the things that you can do is, let's say you're using Mammoth Math and you're working on a particular skill. So what Prodigy does by default is we align it to your state curriculum. So for example, if I'm in Florida, it's going to give me the Florida best standards here. And let's say I'm a grade 4 student, so I'm picking from a grade 4 question here. But let's say I'm working particularly on Mammoth Math right now and I'm doing fractions. I'll be able to see all of the various questions in the grade 4 curriculum for fractions. So let's say representing improper fractions using fraction strips. If that's what I'm working on, I can actually make sure that my child gets those questions in particular in the Prodigy platform. So let's say I'm working on these 3 skills. I can click assign. And in this case, if I click assign here, this will assign the assignment to my class. This is an actual class, so I'm not going to assign just for simplicity. The other thing that I can do here is I can go into my assignment reports and I can click on view reports. And this will give me, let me see if I can get one with some actual data here. This will give me the various students in my class, homeschooling with the 2 kids that you have. You might only have 2 students in your class here, but you can actually see which questions within the assignment your children might have gotten right or wrong. And this might allow you to work with them more specifically and say, hey, I might need to help them out in, my comparing fraction skill, because that is an area that my students need more help in. I see some feedback saying it would be wonderful to easily toggle between the teacher and parent portals without having to sign in different credentials. So Kara, I'm guessing you have both a teacher and parent account and you kind of toggle between them. Yeah. We do notice a lot of our homeschooling parents do that. So it might be helpful. And one of the things that we are looking at, if it's possible, is to create a special homeschooling parent account that actually allows you some of the functionality of the teacher platform, but on the parent side as well without having to add another class. So I can't guarantee that that is for sure coming, but that is something that we are looking at if we can simplify for you internally as well. Thank you for the feedback, Kara.
Rohan, there was another question from about the manipulatives that sometimes they're available in problems and sometimes they aren't. Is there any kind of pattern to that or plans to?
Yes. Yep. So the manipulatives may not be available if you're playing on a small screen. And the reason for that is just because there's not enough real estate or size on that screen in order to display the manipulatives at all times. So if you're playing on a phone, for example, that might be the reason why you're not seeing the manipulatives. And it's just because there's not enough room on the phone for us to pop those out. But if you play on a bigger iPad or computer, you will see the manipulatives there. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback as well. Same iPad. It seems totally random. Okay. Let me follow up with you after that because it should be there. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to kind of show you here that you might want to use is what's called the curriculum progress report. The advantage of this report is you can actually see how your student is doing against the actual standards in grade 4. So for example, if I'm a Florida parent here and I'm aligned to the Florida standards, this will allow me to go into the specific standards, for example, in number sense. And then anywhere you see this yellow or red triangle, this is where your students might be struggling. So I'm going to go into this. This is multiplying two whole numbers, each up to 2 digits using a standard algorithm. And here I notice that some of these students are having trouble with multiplying 2-digit by 2-digit numbers. So what this might allow you to do as a parent is as students are progressing through Prodigy's curriculum, we will actually flag areas that they are struggling so that you might be able to help them in your homeschool practice in those particular areas, as opposed to covering everything. And the skills that they have mastered, you'll be able to see their name in the mastered column here. So you can see they've got this down. You don't necessarily need to spend any more time on it. Finally, one other thing that I will say is in terms of how the Prodigy curriculum works. So there is a placement test that runs for every student the first time that they come in, or every school year, we actually reset the placement test and they get to rerun through the placement test. What that does is it allows us to see where to start students in the curriculum. And our algorithm, the goal of that is to keep every student in what's called their zone of proximal development. So that means that they're optimally challenged in learning, but the questions aren't too difficult to the extent that they get frustrated and give up. And if we determine that they're struggling in a particular area as they're going through the game, we actually pull them back to prerequisite skills. So to give you an example, let's say I'm working on fractions and comparing fractions with unlike denominators. Well, if the denominator has a 5 in it when I'm comparing those fractions, maybe the skill that I'm struggling in is multiplying by 5s. Because if I can't multiply by 5s, I can't compare those two denominators. And we'll pull your students back to that skill. If they're still struggling with multiplying by 5s, we'll actually pull them back to skip counting by 5s. If they're struggling in skip counting by 5s, we'll pull them back to skip counting by 1s or 2s. So we're always trying to find what is the prerequisite skill that your child might be struggling in, and try to build some competency and mastery in that skill and then pull them back up to skill level. So that is a perfect example of mastery-based learning, which Manisha had mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. And that's a technique I used a lot as a tutor to help kids build confidence. And somehow when you have confidence, it just makes it more fun. Because, let's say you have a profoundly gifted child who's just racing through every single thing. It becomes boring and frustrating for them. And if you can get to something where it's a little bit hard, so you have to push a little and you have to make that achievement, then it gets exciting and fun. But if it's too hard and too frustrating, then you start to feel stupid and give up. So that's also, it's a really great way to help that frustration and confidence. Profoundly gifted kids can move through this curriculum very, very quickly. And I think that sometimes, when you are teaching with them, like just taking that moment to stop and pause and say, "Can you explain this back to me?" can be a really helpful way to turn Prodigy from just a supplement into a more main curriculum and really deepen that understanding.
That's a great point.